Personnel and Animal Welfare to order. Mr. Price and myself are present, and we have a quorum. We have no speakers from the general public, so we will open and close general public comments and begin with item number 1.
Item 1, CAO and City Attorney reports an ordinance relative to amending the Los Angeles Administrative Code Section 4.61 to include and provide a salary for the new non-represented class of Director of Automated People Mover Systems, Class Code 7266.
And I'll note that Mr. Smith has also joined us. And item number 3 will go on consent without objection. We'll receive and file the CAO report and ordinance. So item number 1, is there someone to represent?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Angela Brown from the CAO's office. I have with me Assistant General Manager Bob Gilbert from Los Angeles World Airports. The CAO's office recommends adopting an ordinance to include and provide a salary for the new non-represented class of Director of Automated People Mover Systems. The Director of Automated People Mover Systems will be utilized exclusively at Los Angeles World Airports to manage the day-to-day activities, long-term performance, operations, and maintenance of the multi-billion-dollar automated people mover systems. The recommended salary is competitive and in line with existing salaries of other director-level classifications at Los Angeles World Airports. And if you have any further questions, Mr. Gilbert is here to address those.
Any questions, colleagues?
Just one, Mr. Gilbert, thank you for joining us today. I know there was a lot of excitement last week. I think we broke ground on the People Mover project, correct? What's the anticipated construction period, and when do we plan on being in operation?
Well, the construction period is approximately 3.5 years, and we plan to be in operation shortly thereafter. Our whole point is to have the People Mover ready for passengers by 2023. The need for this particular position at this juncture is that this person has to be very familiar with the system and has to generate a staff that would be assisting him or her with ensuring that the KPIs that we've established for the People Mover are met, that the PMs, meaning preventive maintenance, is done, and the contract administration. All of that, we need to have someone with the caliber of person that has already been described, and someone that comes to us as early as possible to become as familiar as possible with this system. Unfortunately, we don't have an APM in the city of Los Angeles, as you well know, and this is a new system, as well as one that we plan to have around for some time. The contract itself goes another 25 years after the completion of the APM system, so we're looking for someone that not only has the expertise but the tenure to satisfy that time frame, or at least most of that time frame.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah, a couple questions. First of all, I'm glad to see this happening. I was at a press conference in 2004 when we announced this great idea in Manchester Place and all that. To see it finally happening is wonderful. So how are you? This is not a person you're going to find just sitting around waiting for a job. Obviously, a very specialized field, and there's not a lot of people that do it. How are you going to go about a national search to find this person?
We've already started a informal national search. What we have is we're looking at people from various entities like San Francisco, SeaTac. We're looking at areas that have APMs to get that type of expertise in. It's going to have to be a national search. As you've already alluded to, we don't have that expertise that's sitting around. And we've started already looking for that level of expertise that may be available to come. And that's one of the things that prompted us to move forward with this salary range because we saw that in order to be competitive for anyone that we would bring in, we would have to have something commensurate with that competition.
Excellent. And then a supporting staff. Obviously, it's not going to be a one-dog show, so I don't want to get animals too mixed up in this, sorry. A one-person show. So have you got existing staff that are going to work on the project and be transferred into a new unit, or how's that going to work?
It's going to be a combination of both. We have some of our MEP, the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing folks that will be able to be trained into the position of contract administrators, as well as ensuring key performance indicators are met. And then we're going to have to import that expertise from outside as well. So it's going to be a combination. It won't be a large staff, but will be one that has pretty specific and direct expertise. So it's going to be a combination of opportunities for our existing staff as well as having to bring in additional staff.
So you don't need to create new positions for them? You can use them in existing salary structure?
Some we will be able to, but others will have to create new
So
positions.
coming back again on this
Yes.
then. Okay, good, thanks.
Excuse me. And then how many do you envision kind of staffing up?
It'll be from 5 to 7.
So when do you think you expect to be able to fill the position? What's the timing look like?
I'm really hoping this calendar year.
And where do you see this fitting into the overall structure at LAWA? Is it a new division? Will it be in an existing division?
We're still discussing that. There's 3 places that the person can be. He can be, or she can be in the Chief Development Office, which is my office, be with the Chief of Operations, which is the landside and airside operations team, and it could even be in the Chief of Facility Maintenance and Utilities. So we're now deciding where would be the best place for them. But initially, they're going to be assigned to the LAMP project team so that they can learn as much as they can about the construction, the design and construction of the system. And then after construction, during the construction, we'll decide where is the best place for that person to reside, along with their team. So that all, we have time to go through that. So we're looking at organizational adjustments for several positions, and this will be one of them.
Very good. If no other questions or comments, we will approve the CAO's recommendations without objection.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 2.
Item 2, Los Angeles Fire and Police Pensions Annual Report for fiscal year 2017-18.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for allowing me to go over some highlights for the Fire Police Pension Plan from 2017-18. It's a rare opportunity that we get to come to committee these days. It's either usually twice a year with your committee and then with Budget and Finance when we go through the budget. So thank you again for the opportunity to...
Ray, could you please say your name into the record?
I am Ray Serrana,
Thank you.
General Manager of Fire and Police Pension.
Everybody knows that.
If somebody needs to use this transcript,
Okay.
they will not know it, and the transcriber will say unknown male voice.
Well, that's perfect.
Keeps you out of trouble.
Well, unknown male voice, if you could walk us through this.
Okay, we'll do. All right. Well, thank you. Just some quick highlights that are contained in the report. Our membership is growing. We serve over 26,000 members these days, with about 13,400 active employees, with just under 13,000 retirees, beneficiaries, and surviving spouses. So the membership continues to increase. We ended the year in a good, solid financial position. We had the annual return was 9.91%. Definitely very good. Another good year of strong returns based on the market. And as you know, as the market changes, but certainly given that return, we ended the year in a strong position with some unrecognized gains. Our funding percentage crept up. We're now at 92.9% funded on the pension side. And on the health side, we crept up as little as well, so now we're 51.3% funded with our overall funding percentage of 86.9. So it basically, on a funded percentage, looks at our assets and basically looks at our liabilities. So we match up our predicted liabilities with what our assets, and that's where we ended up
So we're
with.
92
On the pension side, so we're really well funded on the pension side. We are a little bit lower on our health side at this point.
And on the pension side, these days, I would say that's an unusually high amount of funding.
That is
So that's
a
really
very,
great.
very high number. You do not see that number if you look across the state and across the country. 92.9% is very high. Yeah.
Very good.
And a lot of credit does go to the city. The city does always make its required contribution, and so that is helpful with our funding status. A couple of things I just wanted to sort of highlight as well. We do pay, while the city gives us money, we do pay quite a bit in benefits. If you look at our benefits on the pension side, between all of our disability, service pension, drop payouts, we paid out roughly about $995 million. On the health side, it was another $130 million. So overall, our expenses are a little over $1.1 billion.
How about on the drop side? Is that going up too, or is that?
The drop it fluctuates. So as you may recall with drop, there's a mandatory period of 5 years. And so depending on the influx of members, they enroll in drop, then we'll get those people have to exit. So as that number varies from year to year, it will change. So with the changes recently adopted by council with drop, we actually, over the last 4 months, leading up to the February 1st change, we had slightly under 400 members enroll in drop between police and fire.
Is that a high number for us?
That is very high, yes, that is very high. In fact, we have over 1,700 members enrolled in drop right now, which is the highest it has ever been. So what will happen 5 years from now, when all those folks have to exit drop, then we will see a large drop payout with those balances that have accumulated over time. Okay, so.
Ray, have you run a 5-year projection on a year-to-year basis? Because in talking to the police department, they're expecting 25% of their command to retire in the next 2 years. It's an extremely high number and high-paying number, so there's a very big payout there. So have we are we projecting a bubble in the near term, not the 5-year projection, but the very near term? Are we projecting a big bubble there, and are we adjusting anything for that?
As far as exiting
Yeah.
for the members, yeah, so.
In the pension system.
As far as the pension system, what we end up doing is, so if we project sort of a large payout, what we have to adjust is basically our cash flow, okay? And so where I was going, while we pay out $1.1 billion in expenses between member contributions and the city's contribution, it's less than that. A lot of people don't quite realize we're considered a mature plan, where both what we earn is less than what we pay out. Meaning, in order for us to pay all of our benefits, we must have capital appreciation in our assets. And at the point in time throughout the year, depending on our cash flow, we will have to sell those assets to generate cash in order to pay the bills. So when that year comes, we will be looking at our cash flow needs based on those payouts, and we will have to adjust our assets and selling those assets to pay our bills.
Okay. So then we'll have a reduction of our value at under 92%.
So what will happen is, as we sort of allocate our resources in stocks, bonds, private equity, real estate, et cetera, we will have to make sure we have plenty of liquid assets, which is the stocks and bonds. And so when that time comes, we will be liquidating some of those stocks or bonds, depending on where we are in our asset allocation, in order to pay those bills. Okay. That doesn't mean our funding ratio is necessarily going to go down. But I'm just saying from a cash flow standpoint, we will have to adjust and make sure that we can pay our expenses for the year.
And then the worst of all worlds is if we have that adjustment come up in the next 2 years, and as many people are predicting the economy begins to falter, particularly in the housing market, then our investment rate's going to drop considerably. Now we have shortfall issues. So do we make up that with more contribution?
Usually, there is a pretty simple formula in order to maintain funding for the system. It's made up of member contributions, it's made up of earnings, but there is also, it's made up by the city's contribution.
The general fund contribution.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And so if we don't earn higher than our expected rate of return, and we see expenses going up, then the city's contribution will in turn increase as well.
And I hate to interrupt on a non-policy basis, but Mr. Spindler in the audience is snorting like a pig. I'm giving him his first and only warning. Any further gesturing, snorting, other things to disrupt the meeting, and we'll have to ask you to leave.
So just sort of continuing on in that thought, our assumed rate of return is 7.25%. There are many folks out there that suggest that we should be much lower than that. I'm not quite in that line of thinking at this point. We have a long history of investment policy and our returns. While averages have gone down over the last 20 years, we do need to be mindful of setting an appropriate rate of return. A year from now, we will be conducting another experience study, which will look at not only the assumed rate of return, but also our demographic profile and making changes on our non-economic assumptions as well. And I mentioned that because I know mortality. There's been some new mortality tables for public safety employees. And the tables seem to suggest that those folks are actually living a little bit longer than the average. So it will mean some changes. So with that, though, if I may, just quickly go over just some of the initiatives that we sort of undertook this year. Number one, we actually had a new membership group. We actually airport police. So with the charter change, we now have airport police officers. All new officers are now part of our system. So we have a new membership group. We also continued our outreach to our members through our seminars, our benefit presentations, getting out there and letting people know what their benefits entail and how to maximize those benefits. We continued with our pension administration system, working on data cleansing, getting the system programmed and so forth. We did actually go live in January, so all of our pension payments now for our members are being processed through the new system, so that's a new milestone for us. So we made it through that.
So will your members notice anything different? Will there be any different experience or a different way in which they gain access to their benefits? What difference will they see?
Sure. So the first phase was really just sort of what I'll call the core system, doing the data cleansing, transferring the data into one system. We previously had two systems, so now we just have one system, and so all of the information is contained in that one system. One benefit just right now that's for members is when a member had a change of address or a change in their banking account, or they need to make a change, there was a little bit more of a laborious process in order to get that member a pension check. Now, if we get notification within one business day, we can issue that payment. So that's one benefit right now. The next phase is going to be our member self-service portal. And through that, members will be able to go online, check drop balances, initiate public service requests, service buybacks, things of that sort, and that we expect to have up and running by the end of the fiscal year. And that's where people really see more of the benefit to them.
And internally, we'll see more efficiency, obviously.
Yes, right now, staff is it's much easier to work with one system and make sure that we just have one system of record. And yes, there are some definitely internal efficiencies there. Is there anything I can address? Any questions? Anything in the report that might have caught your eye? We have a lot of information contained in the report, but if there's anything that's...
I don't know, members, any other questions? No, I think I'm good.
Me too.
All right, well, we will thank you for that, and
Thank you.
note and file your report.
All right, thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, actually, I think we might have speakers or a speaker on this. Mr. Spindler, I think you have 1 minute on this item.
That was Serrano with a C.
Well, we'll call his name.
And I just wanted to, I came up with a good attorney for you on this matter. So, I'll produce this for the record. It's very, very good attorney here. I got 3 copies for the committee.
What do we need an attorney for?
Well, you need an attorney because you're right. The city's going to go bankrupt. See, Greg Smith understands. He's ready. He's ready for what's going to happen, the federal bailout of the city when it all crashes. This is why he's the savior. Do you see why that Herb Wesson brought him
Are you
here?
speaking to this item?
Yes, that's what I mean. The asset depletion that's coming. He's telling you this is the modern day version of Paul Revere. This is what it is. It's Greg Paul Revere Smith. All of this shit is gone. The $6 billion you borrowed against Michael was stolen. There's no money. The city's bankrupt. So, anyway, here's this
Thank you,
wonderful
Mr.
attorney.
Spindler. Next speaker,
see this.
although I don't see him present, is Mr. Hunt.
Mr.
Mr. Michael Hunt. He's not present, so we will pass this item, as we said, without objection. Item number 4.
Item 4, City Attorney Report and Ordinance relative to amending the Los Angeles Municipal Code to exclude pet shops from the definition of kennel in the zoning code and to establish development and operational requirements for pet shops in commercial zones. This matter has also been referred to Plum Committee, and it was heard yesterday and approved.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Yi Lu, Planning Department. I'm going to give a very short presentation about this ordinance. Last June, your committee considered and approved an ordinance that would facilitate pet adoption by increasing the number of adult dogs that pet shops, including pet adoption facilities, are allowed to keep overnight. And that ordinance was approved and transmitted to Plum Committee. And in August, the Plum Committee instructed the city attorney to prepare the final ordinance, which was considered yesterday and approved by Plum. Some background information. So currently, pet shops can operate in commercial zones only if they keep 4, only if they don't keep 4 or more dogs overnight. And the establishment that keeps 4 or more dogs overnight are considered as kennels, and those kennels are only allowed in industrial zones. So this ordinance modifies the regulations so that pet shops keeping 4 or more adult dogs overnight can operate in certain commercial zones, and only if they comply with a set of regulations. Those standards were crafted with the help of Department of Building and Safety and Animal Services to ensure that pet shops operates in a manner that is appropriate to a commercial settings. In conclusion, this ordinance in front of you for your approval is reviewed by City Attorney for form and legality and is approved by Planning and Land Use Management Committee. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. So do we have an estimated number of pet shops that would be affected by this ordinance?
Well, currently,
Yes, I'm Brenda Barnett from the Department of Animal Services. We actually have 103 pet shops in the city, but fewer than 17 of them have live animals.
And are we assuming that all 17 of those are likely to do this, or no?
Well, I don't think I've gotten to the point of making an assumption, but I know that when we first passed the city pet shop ordinance, the number was still 17 then, and we wrote to all of those pet stores, and we said we would love to help you, and we would love to make our very best shelter pets available for you, and there were no takers. I think most of them stopped selling pets and went more to the supply side.
Okay. Okay, so answers a couple of my other questions too. So I know there were some amendments you were looking at adding.
Yes, we totally support what's been done so far, but we would like to ask you to add one amendment, and I think in talking with Dove LaSalle from the City Attorney's Office, he recommends the easiest way to do it would be to add an E on LAMC 5350. We would like to have the pet stores restricted so that they purchase or get their animals from either an LA City or an LA County municipal shelter. And the reason for that is when the state pet store ordinance passed, I think it was about a year ago, we have found, and I've got a couple of statements here from people in other parts of the state, that some of the 501c3s were being formed as rescues, in quotes, and they were going out to the puppy mills and bringing the dogs back to the pet stores in other parts of the state. This has been a concern, and it's something that so far what's happening, instead of changing the state law, each county or city is going back and trying to put something in that restricts it in their own district. So we would like to just, from the very beginning, do this and avoid those kind of problems.
And so will you arrange to have the amended wording provided so that when this gets to council,
I'll give you a
we
copy,
have that,
and
we have that currently.
Mr. LaSalle wrote it.
Okay.
Just want to clarify that's for the animal code, right? The 53.
Yes, yeah.
Mhm.
It doesn't affect your code.
Yeah, great.
And any requirements that dogs be taken for walks or placed in an open area, have some level of activity during the day if they're being sold in this setting?
The way the city's permit document is written, it really says that they should be contained, but we do know that the pet stores do take them out. They take them out, and take them for little walks, or take them out for people to meet and hold them and play with them. So I actually have a lot of confidence in our permits officers. They've been on the job for quite some time, and they're very good about working with the pet shops. And if we get any kind of complaints or concerns, they go out and revisit and see exactly what's happening.
Any other questions?
Yeah, you just said that.
Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I'm just surprised you said that the 17 pet shops in LA, none of them sell pets anymore?
Not dogs, cats, or rabbits. Now, some of them have birds, turtles, pocket pets.
So if I wanted a purebred dog, where would I get it then? You're not going to get that from a shelter.
Well, we do about 25% of the dogs that come into the shelters are purebreds, but it doesn't
How do you
mean
know if they have papers?
they may not have papers, and they wouldn't. You can get an ILP number from AKC if you want to show an obedience or something like that. But if you want to buy a show dog, you wouldn't buy that from a pet store anyway.
No.
You would go to a reputable breeder.
Yeah, but we bought many years ago. We had a Malamute who was purebred.
Uh-huh.
She had papers and everything, and we got it from a pet store. So I'm just thinking, where would you go if you wanted a dog of that caliber?
Right.
You're not going to go to a shelter, obviously, and not doing it for show. But
Right. Yeah.
it's just difficult then now.
Right. Yeah. And I, actually, in my admittedly biased opinion, I would still want to go to a reputable breeder rather than a pet store, because you still don't know where that dog came from.
And honestly, a lot of people that, even if they buy a purebred at a pet store, they're not necessarily looking for a purebred. They're just looking for a nice animal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have to admit, 35 years ago, before I knew any better, I bought a Bichon Frise at a pet store. And if I look at his papers, he was clearly, bred at a puppy mill, and had a couple of health problems as a result.
Right.
Best dog ever, but now that I know better, I would never do that. And I think having them in pet shops where they're, I think much more often just bought because the owner's looking for a cute dog.
Yep.
It's a contributor to the problem rather than now a part of a solution to the problem. Any other questions, comments? Okay, we have 3 requests from the public to speak. The first is Michael Hunt. I don't see him present. Wayne Spindler. To be followed by Mr. Herman.
It's red. So this is good.
We already closed it.
Can't you see we need exceptions for purebred dogs? Little cute huskies, little tiny Rottweilers. This is what Greg Smith's talking about. 4 million people want that custom puppy, that dreamy little puppy, and you want us to take these mongrels. Now, Mr. Herman has expertise in breeding. He will talk about this. He's a certified breeder, a breeder of something that starts with the N word. We will not go into that, however, because I don't have time, but sufficient to say the Smith exception should apply. Every 5 years, you can import 1 purebred dog. Every 5 years. It's the Greg Smith exception to the rule. It will only apply to CD5 and CD12 residents and not the ghetto. Thank you.
Mr. Herman?
It's all my time, 1 minute?
Yes.
Well, I believe the plaintiff, Mr. Spindler, is correct. Mr. Commissioner, Your Honor. You see, I have the most experience of training a PSD, which some jackass has in there, like the attorney over there, probably don't know shit about. It's called a psychiatric service dog. So, how did I learn and have the ability to do this? Department of Justice, ADA.gov. And with years of experience visiting my doctors since 2012 when you falsely arrest me, woof, woof, and I became a dog in a kennel.
You're off topic.
No, I ain't off
Please stay to this topic.
I'm talking about how to keep dogs out of kennels and how good management from Peppa Pig and Mr. Smith, with the recruitment of Mr. Spindler and I, can make animal service a better department and you can serve the community better. Fuck you, 42 USC.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, members? If not, I will ask that we, let's see, do we have any speakers still? No, we've had all our speakers on this one. That we adopt the draft ordinance without objection. And with the amendment as proposed by the GM of Animal Services. Is there anything else on the docket?
That clears the desk.
In that case, we are adjourned.